democracy looks like. Tell me what democracy looks like. This is what democracy looks like. Tell me what democracy looks like. This is what democracy looks like. All in this together. We are in this together. We are in this together. Hello, helicopter. We are in this together.
My name is April D'Amato, and I'm the host of In This Together. There is a belief that has gone on in the New Age lightworking community that if you focus solely on the positive and avoid the negative, you'll be fine. I remember for a long time I really bought into that notion, and I wanted to believe that I could just immerse myself in the light and presume many lightworkers can understand what I mean. I removed myself from government and mainstream media because as an empath, it was too toxic for me. Now that is fine if I were living in a bubble and have no need to exist in the physical reality of daily living. But unfortunately or fortunately as it may be, I'm residing in the physical reality and am bound by whatever governmental and societal rules we are living under. And that, my dear light being friends, is the reason we need to stand together now to create a love revolution. In case you are wondering who and what a light worker is one who shines their light to make this world a better place. In This Together is dedicated to showing how the spiritually awakened people and community activism come together to support our community, our country, our planet, and give you a voice on how you can participate too. Today's show is about Standing Rock Sioux water protectors in North Dakota. I'm here with my guest, Rachel Sayat, to have an informative discussion with her. To start with, I asked the audience, are you familiar with the term water protectors? Your reaction may be one of the following. What are water protectors? I haven't heard of this. Why are they stopping the pipeline? What is Dakota Access? I stand with Standing Rock. Those are just some of the responses that I've heard recently. I've been following closely the developments in North Dakota since the summer when I first heard about what was happening there. And I've been praying, sending love and light the entire time. While many of us have been distracted by the campaign season and the stress of our lives, there have been major developments that impact all of us there. So the basic facts are this. The water protectors, also known as protesters, are trying to stop the Dakota Access Pipeline from being built on and near their land as granted by treaty. The pipeline for carrying fracked oil will not only impact the lake where the Standing Rock Sioux get their drinking water from, but move through the Missouri River as well. The water protectors have been demonstrating their concern through peaceful gatherings, marches, signs, and prayers, expressing their First Amendment rights, but they have been met with some real violence at the hands of a militarized police force while both state and federal government watch and do nothing. If you do not understand what fracking is and its major impact on our environment, I recommend that you look into why fracking is so bad for us, our drinking water, and more. I encourage you to do more research on your own for this issue. That is the brief background to introduce our discussion. So this brings me to the water protectors and what is taking place in North Dakota. So Rachel, welcome. Thank you for joining me here today. Please tell our audience a little bit about you and your background and why you're interested in this.
Tabutni April, thank you for having me here today. My name is Rachel Sayat, Nuisawak Rachel Sayat. That is, my name is in Mohegan. I come from the Mohegan tribe in Uncasville, Connecticut. And I just wanted to, explain to you a little bit about my background before we begin. I did a master's in anthropology, and during that time, I studied a lot about different tribes, various different tribes throughout the world, throughout the country, throughout the world. And I also worked at the Peabody Museum of Archaeology. So I spent quite a bit of time researching not just my own tribe, but also other tribes throughout the country. When I was at the Peabody Museum, I worked on an exhibit about the Battle of Little Bighorn and about Plains ledger art called Rio Piata, Contested Images of the Lakota West. And I believe that exhibit is still up today up at Harvard at the Peabody Museum. So in terms of what my interest in this movement is, I actually found out about it through Facebook. Probably, I don't know.
Isn't that how we find a lot of things out, social media?
Yeah, probably towards, maybe the first few months I saw a few posts, and then the summer it started getting really crazy. I have a lot of friends throughout the country from different tribes all over the country and all over the world because I go to a lot of conferences. So, I have some indigenous friends from New Zealand and other places who are even, going down there and things like that. Started to see that everybody was going there, and so I researched just a little bit more to see what exactly was happening, a little bit about the Missouri River, the pipeline, and I was like, well, I don't know if I have a way to get there or anything like that, and I have a full-time job. I work for the Mohegan Tribe as a library assistant full-time, and I also do some public education. I do talks on Native culture, Native oral traditions, specifically New England, as well as on Native American foods. So I'm a pretty busy person, and so I was, how am I going to get there? Well, my mother actually, I think that was the breaking point when she went. She went, I think, a couple weeks before I did. It was mid-September, and she canceled her vacation and instead decided to go to Standing Rock. She was going to go glamping.
That's a very big change.
And instead,
I don't think Standing Rock is glamping.
Yeah, so instead she spent the time, actually most of it, driving there with her husband. Mm-hmm. And while they were down there, I realized I was going to Minnesota anyways for this Native American Nutrition Conference that I was being sent to through work, and it was only about 7.5 hours from there. And I thought to myself, okay, maybe I can extend my ticket, I can get out there, at least donate some support, pray with them, do whatever I can do at the time. And I just extended my trip an extra couple days, and then I was able to kind of plan it out. And it was quick, but it was very exciting, and I'm glad I was able to do it.
So tell us more about the water protectors and what that really means. I know they don't like to be called protesters, and they want to be known as water protectors. So where did that come from, and what is that about?
I think that, I don't exactly know who originated the term, but basically they're saying that this isn't a protest. This is something to protect the environment. This is something we're doing to protect Mother Earth. So we're protecting the water, we're protecting life, we're protecting our precious resources, and that's not what the Dakota Access Pipeline is about. That's about, money and greed, and not at all about, protecting the earth, which we only have one earth to live upon.
And so the water protectors, what are they hoping to accomplish with the, stopping the pipeline? Is that their goal, or is their goal to just basically send oil companies home?
Right.
Send them away.
I believe that their goal is mainly to stop that pipeline. That seems to be the main initiative of how this kind of began. And obviously, if they could stop other ones, I'm sure they would. I know there's people out there who have not just protested at this pipeline. They've been at Keystone XL. They've been at other sacred sites throughout the country. Mm-hmm. The girl that I drove with, she's actually back out there now, and I drove with her from Minnesota to North Dakota. And she's Acoma Odom, and that's also called Pima, is another word for that tribe, and they're from Arizona. And I know that she was coming from one protest near her area, which was they were building a freeway through the Sacred Mountains down there. Oh. And then she was going to Standing Rock, and then she went back, and now she's back at Standing Rock again. So there's a lot of sacred sites being desecrated throughout the country, and this is just one of them.
It's really important that people know that too. It's not just Standing Rock having this happen right now. It's been happening all the time.
Right. This has been
happening.
Several
Native tribes. Correct?
Right. So this has been happening for hundreds of years. This has been happening since colonialism. I mean, my tribe, as a Mohegan person, we were affected very early on in the 1600s. You look at the history over at Lakota, it was much later. It was the 1800s. Western expansion, manifest destiny, all of those things. Mm-hmm. So they had a lot more time. There wasn't as much disease that was spread, but there was more just devastation in terms of where they were moved and things like that. My tribe was lucky enough to be able to stay in our homeland, which has good land for agriculture and things like that. Mm-hmm. Whilst in North Dakota, they were put in the most terrible areas, and it's just you can't even grow anything there. So, so back to what brought me there. Basically, there was just so many people that I knew going, and I just thought to myself, okay, how am I going to get there and how am I going to help? And, it was also just because it was all these native nations coming together. And that's not something that we have often. We don't have really, each tribe doesn't really welcome each other in necessarily.
Well, I'm gonna stop you for a moment because I know myself and many other people may have or have wanted to attend like powwows.
Right.
And so we see a gathering of tribes at times for the powwows. But what you're saying is that that's not normal.
Right. So I'm trying to explain. Yeah. Basically, I have friends in all different tribes. So if you know somebody, it's a little bit different. But because we've lost so much over, through colonialism, through westward expansion, all these things throughout history, a lot of tribes try to kind of keep it in the tribe. A lot of things, whether it be cultural traditions, sacred stories, artifacts that were, a lot of them being repatriated from museums these days, getting our artifacts back, things like that, because we've lost so much. And, in New England especially, it's, the contact that happened so early on, the diseases that devastated our people, 90% of the populations around this area were decimated in those first 100 years of contact through those diseases. And so, we've always been very small here. We're not as big of tribes again, out west they've got some bigger tribes, but it's just a different history. Every tribe has such a different history. And, you have to kind of look at all that history when you look at Standing Rock, what's happening. It's just history repeating itself. And we'll talk about that in a little bit.
Yeah. I want to go back to what you were talking about, the gathering of the tribes, because we were talking about how, like I mentioned the powwows and how, to me, that's tribes gathering. Right. But when you're talking about Standing Rock, I remember reading, because I have not been out there myself, I remember reading that it was the largest gathering ever.
Right. So
ever.
So, yeah.
Is that true?
Right. So to get back to that, as far as I know, it is. There are these huge. Some of these powwows are actually huge. There's the Gathering of Nations powwow out in Albuquerque, which is one of the biggest powwows. I think it's thousands of people. So in terms of an actual, it's more of an event. It's not like a protest or something like that.
Like a gathering for a real purpose.
Right.
Besides just having fun.
Right. It does have purpose to it because it's connecting with people and exchanging ideas and things like that. But in terms of gathering of tribes, like in New England, we might have some events that, might be Mohegans and Narragansetts or something like that. It doesn't even happen that often. I work myself, I'm on a board for the Narragansett Indian Museum, and I enjoy, it's called the Tomaquag Museum in Exeter, Rhode Island. And I enjoy being part of that because we actually do have various people from different tribes who are on the board, and it's not something you really get every day. I mean, at Mohegan, it's very much, I work there, and there's mostly Mohegans, and then a lot of people from outside that work in my building. And then if you go to another tribe, you're mainly going to see the people from that tribe. You might see one or two people from other tribes. Like one of my good friends is Ojibwe. He works with me. I know at Wampanoag they have a Lakota woman who's doing language work. So things like that, because they can exchange information and help with things. But it's just, because we have, again, like so much loss,
it's a lot of separation.
A lot of separation, and also because each tribe is inherently sovereign. We all had our own governments before there was the political form of federal recognition and all of that. But with federal recognition, with political sovereignty, we have to focus on our individual identities. And so that kind of leads in what I was getting to. It is the biggest gathering, and it's bigger than the Wounded Knee incident in 1973, which is something that a lot of people have been bringing up lately.
Can you share that for our audience?
I will briefly.
They might not know.
Right.
Or they might not remember.
So basically, there was a protest of sorts that went along with the American Indian movement, and it was at the Wounded Knee Massacre site. And it was basically, there was some corrupt government going on within the tribe, but also they were unhappy with how their treaty rights were violated. And a lot of people were just kind of like, this is enough. And this protest did wind up becoming a little bit violent on both sides. And I think a lot of people learned from that in a way and, realized that that's not the way to go. Especially nowadays, we have so much more modern, weaponry and everything, it would be totally out of hand. But there are people, there's people that were part of the protest that are still in jail today.
And this is from 1973?
Yes. Yeah, they're still in jail today. And, there's some controversies about the American Indian movement. Some people think it's a really a great thing that happened. I believe a lot of good did come out of it. It was basically kind of happening alongside the civil rights movement. You'll see pictures of some Native activists alongside Stevie Wonder and some of the old pictures, and like different people that you wouldn't necessarily see together. Buffy St. Marie being a kind of a famous Native singer who was in some of those old photos. But when you look at the kind of the timeline, there was this American Indian movement. There was all these protests occurring. I know a woman even from Connecticut who's an elder who was out there, and after that, there were things like the Indian Religious Freedom Act that came out of it and things like that. So it did make some progress, even though it was, not everybody agrees with how it was done. But there was only supposedly about 200 people out there. So when I looked at those numbers, I was like, wow, that's really surprising. I always thought of it as this huge movement.
Yeah.
But today we have thousands of people at Standing Rock. So it's very different. I think social media has a lot to do with it. It's a different time. We as Native people are much more connected, just like everyone else. So that's why.
Do you notice, like, so you had said earlier how the tribes, each nation kind of keeps their stuff together and they don't always interact, right? We were talking about that a little while ago. So now in Standing Rock, because so many have come together, do you think that's changing? Or is it just for this cause?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's always, I don't want to say that everyone keeps themselves completely. I think that there's just, again, there's specific regalia, specific designs, cultural values, stories that we kind of keep to ourselves in certain ways. But there's definitely also a lot of exchange, and there's always been that exchange throughout history. For instance, my master's thesis was on oral traditions of the of the tribes of New England, Mohegan and Wampanoag specifically, and we have stories about giants and little people at Mohegan, which they also have at Wampanoag, and they're different stories, but they're the same kind of, the same spiritual figures. Yeah, and so but a large part of my thesis research was actually tracking that and looking at it, and it realized that at this stage it can't really be tracked. Like, where did this come from? It's basically just, someone tells someone a story maybe a couple hundred years ago, and then it'll become part of that oral tradition in the tribe.
So with the largest tribal gathering, were you out there when did you meet a lot of different people from tribes you've never known or you've not met?
I met people from, I've met a lot of different people from different tribes over the course of my life, but the difference was just being there in their territory, I would say. All of the things that I learned while working at the Peabody Museum and being at Harvard, surrounding myself with artifacts on a daily basis. I was with those types of artifacts that would have been part of Wounded Knee. They would have been part of Little Bighorn. Wow. Ledger art, whatever it was, and then being there after spending so much time with those objects and researching the history of the people, that's really what impacted me the most. Seeing all those people gather for, such a great cause, but also feeling that bloodshed that's happened in those territories. You could really feel it, just driving there from Minnesota. The entire drive was just kind of like stepping back in time in a lot of ways. And then, when you get there and, you see people on horseback, all of those things, but also just praying there and feeling, like you could just feel it in the earth. You could just feel that kind of history of that bloodshed. And I know a lot of people were saying that they felt that same way.
It must be nice to have people like experience that in a way, because they're taking part in like real change too. Like where we don't want it to end the way it did before.
Right? And that's exactly right.
Doesn't that kind of go? Let's go back to the water protectors in terms of how are they protesting? I had mentioned how they're like holding signs and they're having prayer gatherings. They're coming together. So what is their mission, I guess? Is it to be peaceful? Because you had mentioned that Wounded Knee back in 1973 was not peaceful. So what is their view now, and what is their plan in terms of it?
There's just being peaceful. There's no drugs and alcohol allowed there. There's no weaponry allowed there. Even with the veterans coming, this week, there's thousands of veterans coming down to Standing Rock, and even they're not bringing weapons or anything like that.
I saw some signs like on some social media. It's been big for me as well, so I've gotten a lot of information that way. I've seen some signs posting, no weapons, no alcohol, no drugs coming into here. You're not allowed into camps, like in the front of the camps. And I also saw a few things where on social media they're basically saying, we just want peace here. So if you're not coming with that intention, if you're not coming in to assist us, please don't come. Correct?
Right. Exactly. So, again, things have changed quite a bit in the past couple of months. It's still the same mission. They're still there to stop the pipeline, but things have kind of, on the Dakota Access side and the Army Corps of Engineers kind of acted up since I've been there. But when I got there, all you could feel was peace, and that's it. Like, it was just the most peaceful feeling. I can't even really put it into words. Like, when I arrived at the camp, I was dropping off my friend where she was going at Sacred Stone. It was just this energy that definitely didn't feel on the drive there, which on the drive there, we as two Native people were actually a little afraid for our lives.
Really?
More
Wow.
than anything else, just because, we weren't sure as we stopped in a coffee shop, most people
What to expect?
are not supportive of the Native cause, in that area. They're on the
It's
other
very,
side.
It's very different out west than it is here in the Northeast, at least from
Right.
my experience when I had gone out west. Back in 1990, I went out to Montana, and it was like there's this energy between the natives and the white people, if you
Right.
will. And I was like, wow, this is really weird. But what's crazy is I went out to Montana, the same area, I want to say 5 years ago now, and it was the same energy. And I'm like, wow, nothing's changed. I can't understand this. It doesn't make sense to me. So I think our audience needs to know that, because I don't think they realize that, because here, I don't find that separation as much. I mean, I think it's there, but I don't think it's as much as it is out west.
I think there's a lot of problems here as well. It's the historical, trauma here as well of what happened. It was obviously much earlier, and our history is not as well known because, it happened so early. So from everything from the first Thanksgiving, not really the first Thanksgiving, but what is called the first Thanksgiving, to just our history in general as Native peoples is very little known outside of our circles. There are a lot of scholars writing about it. Myself, I'm one of them. But there's anthropologists call it like the myth of the vanishing Indian, and in the early 1900s, people were recording, what they thought was vanishing Indians. And here in the Northeast, we always say that it's the most prominent, or one of the most prominent places to have that vanishing Indian myth, because you might see us, you might see the casinos, but most people aren't necessarily associating the tribes with the casinos.
It's more about money and,
Right. They're looking at it like this is
Commercial.
just a casino. They don't look at it as this is built to support the tribe.
Right.
And the history that what goes with it. So out there, again, I'm saying it might be better known because I studied anthropology. So not to sidetrack too much, but basically, I don't know what the original question was, but
it was about the peaceful.
the peacefulness.
To being peaceful there, because I think a lot of people are getting a misconception, especially if they're watching mainstream media. If they're not
Right.
actually exposing themselves to social media and alternative media, they're not getting accurate information, because
Right.
the mainstream media is actually projecting it as a different situation
Yep.
altogether. At
Yeah.
least from what I'm hearing and experiencing from people I know that are out there.
Yeah, and I've heard that too. I've seen only a couple clips, at Fox News and things like that. I watch much more Native American news stations than I do those stations. So I'm following, all of my friends, on Facebook and on the Native news sites and everything like that. So I'm seeing the real story. But I have seen a little bit of the other side as well. But a lot of people that I know that are out there still, or have come and gone. One woman I know, she's a professor at Brown, and she brought her class out there, and they actually wound up being out there for the November 20th incident, which I was going to bring up on our next question.
Before we get to that, I actually want to talk about, so I want to come back to the peacefulness of it. So when we talk about peacefulness, they're coming together in prayer. What does that mean? Because I know what that means,
Right.
but our audience might not know what that means.
So basically, instead of any type of violent action, they're just praying. They're singing. There are people from all over the world. People as far as New Zealand, Hawaii. There's a lot of Hawaii protesters or water protectors out there. The Mauna Kea site in Hawaii, where they're trying to build a telescope, is one of the Hawaiian sacred sites. And I actually have a friend who was one of the big protesters at that site, and he's helping them learn how to do peaceful protesting. And he's been posting pictures of showing them specific methods,
like nonviolent, how to
that they use. So that's how everybody's going about it. When I was out there, actually, one of the most exciting things for me was I got to help paint one of the signs that's out there, and it says, I think it's the Water is Life sign, the yellow one. And the woman who was designing all of those signs, Christy Belcourt, is a famous Métis artist. And you'll see like the Thunderbird, which is a sacred symbol for Lakotas. You'll see those types of things on the signs. So they're using all their kind of like sacred, their sacred methods, their traditions to kind of keep it in line. And I think, I'm sure there's been times where somebody wanted to step out of line or something like that. But I mean, from what I've, talked to people and just from being there myself, there was just all you felt was peace. And there was nothing, there was nothing more peaceful that I've ever experienced in my life. It was just open. There's no money exchange there, which, I know a lot of people find fascinating, and you don't even realize it when you're there because everything's donations.
Mm-hmm.
You don't even think about it. You come in and you bring your donations to the donation tent, and then you're just welcomed. Mm-hmm. And it's not like that many places. It's, throughout the country, whether
it's like
it be
its
tribes
own little
or not.
world.
Right. So it's like and I saw donation trucks being unloaded and things like that, which is great. There's just constant, donations. And I know at this stage, they more and more of the winterizing has been done and things like that. But it's definitely like stepping back in time in more ways than one. The horses and the fact that we, bartering, that was our, that's our traditional way of living. It's not focused on money, at all.
It sounds like a really different world compared to what we all live every day
Right.
in our day-to-day lives, and it sounds amazing, actually. I wanted to just say a couple things before we talk about the recent events that's happening at Standing Rock. So when I've been doing my own research and looking into things, I found that they are so peaceful, and when I say that, they don't have weapons. They have nothing but words, their voice, their singing, their prayer, and they have each other. And everyone from different walks of life is joining them, not just different native tribes, but everyone is showing up. And it makes me very emotional. I'm actually feeling emotional talking about it right now because I feel it to my core, how much love they're trying to bring to our planet and show us that this is the way. And they say water is life, and I'm going to use their words, and I'm probably going to say it wrong, so forgive me if anybody knows exactly what to say. Miniwachoni, and that means water is life, I believe, in Lakota. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's really important now to pay attention to what's happening there because we have been removed. We've not seen a lot of what's happening to all these people in their land. I mean, from what I've learned historically about the Lakota particularly, that they have gone through so much movement on their land. They have been moved and displaced many, many times. And now what else people don't know about the Dakota Access Pipeline is originally they were going to offer it through the city of Bismarck, and they decided, the people in Bismarck said, no, that can't come here. It's going to affect our water. It's going to affect our land. So they moved it over to the territory where the Lakota are, the Standing Rock Sioux. And that tells you there that it's already another issue involved, not just simply they want the oil to come through. They're actually saying to these people, that's okay, you don't matter. We're going to destroy your land and your water, but that's okay. And, and for those of you who are like, well, whatever, I want to bring to your attention that it's not just affecting them, and they know that, and that's why they're saying water is life, because they're actually fighting for a bigger cause, and they're standing up for a bigger cause. It's for the waters of our planet. And if you know that area where they're trying to put the pipeline, they're putting it through the Missouri River, and I believe it affects, I want to say, 18 million people from what I've been reading and hearing. So it's a much bigger situation than most people are aware of. So I want to just bring that up and make sure that my audience knows all about that. Another thing that I'd like to talk about now is, so with this peaceful information happening, we all know now there's been peaceful protesting. And again, it's funny, when I usually say protesting, I say protectors, but I'm saying protesting so you understand what I'm talking about. So they're gathering together and they're saying this is our land. They're stopping them from going to where their burial grounds are, where their family and their ancestors are. And that is like really horrible, because I don't think any of us would want to be prevented to see our ancestors in our burial areas. So it's so much more than, the little bit that the mainstream media has been telling us. So alternative media is your best access. Social media is a great way to get information. But I'm hoping I can inform you today of more information about what is going on there. So with all the peaceful water protectors standing there asking for us to be safe, what's happening now is that the corporations that are the Dakota Access, who's trying to build the pipeline, they've really gotten involved now, where they are angry because this is now an annoyance to them. It's not just, this is not just like, oh, they're there. It's getting to be an annoyance. It's affecting their building of the pipeline. And from what I know, their building started happening even more haphazardly and much more quickly. And so that kind of brings us up to a little bit of what happened in the past, but in the last few months, actually last couple months particularly, a lot of violence has been directed towards the water protector. So I'm going to ask Rachel to talk a little more about that, which she may know.
Right. So
Thank you.
specifically, the November 20th incident, I would say that I think luckily it attracted a lot of media attention, but prior to that, there had been tear gassing, there had been some rubber bullets that the Army Corps of Engineers, the government had kind of, been shooting at the water protectors, and again, they were just peacefully protesting.
And even before that, weren't there trained guard dogs attacking?
Right. So
that was
that's
like in
what I was saying.
August, I think,
yeah,
right?
so that's what I was saying. There were a few incidents prior to November 20th. Actually, when I was driving down there, first a friend of mine who had come down said, maybe you guys shouldn't go. It's getting worse. He was there a couple weeks before, and then as we were driving, the tear gassing was happening, and my mother called and she said, are you sure you want to go? We were already on our way. So it was getting kind of crazy. But again, that was mainly happening at Red Warrior Camp, which is what people refer as the front line. It's mainly happening over there now. It seems to kind of have spread to all the camps. Some of the things that have been happening, they are still the ones that are on the front towards the pipeline. But it seems as if other camps have now come over to there and back and forth more because things have gotten so intense. So there were, like April just mentioned, various incidences of the tear gassing and the rubber bullets and the dogs prior to the November 20th. But then it just got to a point where I guess the water protectors were trying to peacefully move one of the blockades. They moved it over so folks could see what was happening. And I'm not 100% sure, what the location was, but they wanted people to see what was actually happening, and they moved something. And that's triggered this whole violent action. So they didn't do anything violent. It just kind of, they moved, a blockade.
And weren't they also building a bridge to go over the water to get to the mountain, the barrio?
I did see that as well. Yeah, there's something of that sort. So it wasn't, they hadn't done anything violent. And then all through the night on November 20th, there were water cannons shot at them. It was 18-degree weather. Freezing water was being shot at the water protectors, which, is just, beyond, I wouldn't even call it ironic, just the whole situation.
It's beyond comprehension.
Yeah, it's just beyond comprehension. They're there to protect the water, and they're out there in freezing temperatures so they can protect our planet. And meanwhile, they're being shot at by water. Yeah, and, wastefully, and also to the point where a lot of people developed hypothermia from that night. There were also rubber bullets. There was also tear gas. Mace.
I also saw people's skin coming off just from the freezing cold temperatures, the water hitting them so hard, ripping off their skin. Yeah,
yeah, I'm sure. And one woman I know lost her arm. And so there was actually real violence happening. And again, some of my friends were actually out there that night. Luckily none of them were severely injured, but I saw a lot of the videos as it was happening, and it was going all through the night. I'm not sure what time that they actually stopped, but just the fact that, these people are out there in the freezing cold being peaceful, and it's dark out, they're sneaking up on them like that. It's just, the whole thing wasn't right, and it was very upsetting.
I also believe they were flying like planes over, and they're throwing concussion grenades.
Right, there were grenades as well. Yes,
they're doing all kinds of things that are just absolutely incomprehensible. And when I'm like, my background, as I've mentioned in a previous show, is politics. Like, I worked in government several years back, and when I was in school, I studied law, and I wanted to focus on constitutional law. That's very important to me. And when I learned about our Bill of Rights, we have First Amendment, Second Amendment. Well, our First Amendment right is to peacefully gather and protest. And as long as we're in a peaceful assembly, we can gather and do this. It's not a problem. And so one of the things that I found is that what people aren't realizing, not only is it our water being destroyed by this problem, and not only is it that our the oil pipeline is going through here, and it could actually cause more harm to the water. And not only are these people being harmed, but we're saying that we have a constitution and we uphold these amendments, but we're not doing that. And our own government is using our own people against our people. Right. And it's like, it doesn't even seem like we're in America anymore. It actually seems like a totally different country when I see images and videos and information about this. Like, what we're forgetting is if it can happen there, it can happen anywhere. And if we're allowing anybody to trample on our Constitution, First Amendment rights over there with anybody in the Standing Rock area, but anybody in general, but anybody in Standing Rock, if we allow this to happen and we don't shine light on it and we don't actually speak up for people and realize that we're all humans, we're in this together, we're not alone, we all are connected. If we don't do something about that, it can happen right near you, it can happen near me, it can happen anywhere where we are. And so there's so much more going on than just what you're getting bits of information, and I mean through mainstream media.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and I mean, that was back to what I was saying before about, there was Wounded Knee incident, but that was, it was kind of named after the massacre at Wounded Knee that happened in the 1890s, and, all of these Indian wars that happened in the late 1800s, which I myself didn't know that they were so late until I started studying it in college and then, more in depth in grad school, and just realizing how close that history is. People look at it like it was hundreds and hundreds of years ago. And for Mohegan and the tribes here, a lot of it was, but it does continue to the present day. For them, it's not so long ago. When I went out there, as I mentioned, it did feel like stepping back in time, and not in a good way. Not to the, at Standing Rock it was a good way because you feel the peace.
The grouping,
the gathering. You feel the prayer, people have teepees. It was like, oh wow, I've always wanted to live, I've always said that I wanted to, experience life before colonialism. That's in my head. I just always thought it would be interesting. So it's almost, you like that. But on the way there, we stopped in one saloon, to get a bite. And like I was saying, we weren't sure, it's these things, it just looked like one of those man lodge type places. And it was just very
scary.
Yeah, very off-putting. And just, just wherever we went, we just felt a little, just nervous. And, at the actual camp, we actually went around the blockade on the way in, but on my way out, I did see the military blockade, and luckily for me, that was the only contact I had with them directly. It was just, they let me through. But it was just very off-putting to even experience that,
It's really, honestly, it would frighten me. It would frighten me. I'd be very uncomfortable. Just the pictures I've seen and the military-style police and their whole getup, everything they're wearing.
Exactly.
It's just it really makes me uncomfortable. I can't imagine being presently there with all that happening and still try to maintain peace within me. Because the hardest thing we have to do is to maintain peace within us so that we can project that and maintain that whole peaceful protesting or protecting, maintaining that has to come from inside. And if you're fear all the time, you're always in fear. But as you were talking, some thoughts came into my mind about, you had said something and it really hit me because I hadn't really thought from that perspective about it being in the 1890s. That is not that long ago, and the trauma that must still be in those people, because generations, like you said, everything's passed down in a tribe. It's passed down orally, and they share those stories. All that stuff comes, and it re-traumatizes them. And to be in this experience still, where there's a battle, still going on. Clearly, it's never finished.
Right, exactly, and that's what I've been hearing from a lot of Native people. And also just some Native news sources. Just the fact that they're now suffering emotional trauma when many of them already have the historical trauma.
Right.
I mean, it isn't that far removed, and it's ongoing. I mean, there's high rates of alcoholism, diabetes, obesity. All these things that we have on reservations are because of what happened, because our food sources were taken away from us, because we were moved onto isolated areas. All of the things that happened, it hasn't stopped. Yes, we're all living in a modern day world, but over there, they're pretty isolated. Many of you might already know, but on November 25th, an eviction notice was issued to the camp that they needed to leave, and that is not only the day after Thanksgiving, but that's actually Native American Heritage Day, which I believe it might have been Obama who declared it a national holiday. I'm not sure, but I know that it is a national holiday that not many people recognize. So I would love to let you guys know that is Native American Heritage Day, November 25th.
Oh, November, I'm sorry.
The day that they issued the eviction notice.
Is National
Native American Heritage Day. And I think with everything that's happening with Columbus Day, renaming that, it's kind of been sidelined a little bit, but hey, the more Native American holidays, the better in my book.
And I don't know if this is a fact or not, so please don't quote me on this. I believe the eviction notice is for December 5th, which will be Monday, December 5th. and this is probably not going to air until much later, just so you know. But what I did read somewhere, and of course I got it through social media, so you can't always believe everything on social media.
Right,
but
exactly.
the stuff about the Standing Rock Sioux is valid and very important, because that's the only way they're getting information out of those camps, because they're trying to stop communication. So December 5th, I also found out from social media that it's the birthday of Custer.
Right, exactly. Yeah, so that's,
Is that, I don't know if that's a fact or
that's
not.
exactly what I was going to mention. Yeah, so that's, again, it sounds like
It's horrible.
they're just kind of, pulling at heartstrings just to do it almost, just because, it is us versus them out there. It is literally a reenactment, of what was happening in those Indian wars. Not exactly, but it's the same kind of thing. And, Custer's Last Stand, the Battle of Little Bighorn, whatever you want to call it, that was a victory for the Lakota people and other Plains people. But then 15 years later, the massacre of Wounded Knee happened, and, things just got worse again. But, to put it on his birthday, it wasn't an accident to schedule that, and that's exactly, thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, that's something that hit me pretty hard, because when I was reading an article, I had, being intuitive and having all these like past life memories, I think I have a direct connection to this area because my body reacts to everything that I'm hearing. I had this flash that I was seeing, like I had this past life thing, so bear with me if those of you are not very into the intuition and the psychic stuff, but I had this flash of the computer. I saw maps being let out, open, and I saw soldiers from Custer, Custer's group of people, and I saw them putting maps out where they're going to move the people. And then I saw it transposed with an image of maps of the pipeline. And I was like, oh, wow. And that's when I started to recognize this is the same frequency and vibration coming up from the earth. It's actually unleashed that same energy. But then I got a very clear message from my guides that it's not going to be the same. It's going to be different this time. We're going to change it.
Right.
Like,
exactly.
as the people come together, they will.
And that's the goal. I know that, many people are saying that hopefully, this will bring up a lot of the history that hasn't been told. I mean, some people such as myself and others trying to incorporate it into school books and into, educational lectures at college level is really where most people can hear, what happens.
Right.
It's taken a long time to get to, younger generations, but they're not learning it still. And, our history, we do have this national narrative. In New England, it's kind of a national narrative, the Puritans, and it's throughout the country. It's basically just kind of, pretending that none of it happened. And this has gotten to a breaking point where people are realizing, these Native people are losing their land. They're sacred sites. As you mentioned, the burial ground, the pipeline is going through the burial ground. There was videos of, burials being dug up and things like that. That wouldn't be okay for another culture. It happens constantly to Native Americans. It's been happening for hundreds of years, our burial grounds getting dug up. There's malls and stuff on top of burial grounds all around our area. I mean, and I know for my tribe, we recently had a Masonic temple ripped down that we paid for. We purchased the land, ripped down the temple, and now it's a memorial site because that was one of our burial grounds. But this happens everywhere, and it's been happening. And it doesn't. If it was another culture, any other culture, it wouldn't be acceptable. It just wouldn't be. And it goes in line with everything from Native mascots to that. I mean, we are people. We are here. We are thriving as nations, many of us, and people look at it as if it's the vanishing Indian, as if we no longer exist. And Standing Rock is at least it's educating people.
I actually, it's funny that you say that, because that's exactly what I think. Like, as bad as the situation is, I think it's actually bringing to light what we haven't seen and what we don't talk about and what we don't really pay attention to. So as bad as that might be, it's what we need right now to bring focus to like what's really happening here in America. So I have a couple last questions for you, because I don't want to keep you forever.
Right.
Because I could talk forever with you.
I guess before we move on to the next question, just really quickly, I just wanted to mention that I was able to pray with people when I was out there, and I go to Sweat Lodge here back home, and we don't talk about what goes on in the Sweat Lodge specifically, but what was nice about it was, because I do pray out here, I felt very comfortable in the Sweat Lodge there, and I had brought my own medicine, which was this prayer tie. which we actually have at the sweat that I attend. We have some Lakota folks who come out once a year to do ceremony with us. And a lot of times what we will do is we will offer prayer ties if someone has a specific issue. And that's, you're offering to the creator, you're offering tobacco tied in here as kind of a gift to the creator so that they'll grant you the blessing. So it's kind of an exchange kind of thing. So I brought this as protective medicine on the trip, and it was funny because the girl I was with, she had her own, and she had some salts, I guess, from Mexico that they collect, that some of the Pimas will go and collect, which I thought was fascinating. It was in a little bag. So we both drove, you know, with everything that was happening with tear gassing, we had both of our little medicines up, and it was a really nice experience. I mean, she was a fascinating person as well, but I brought this, you know, all the way down there and all the way back. I could really feel it, you know, carrying the energy. And of course, you know, in the lodges they had prayer ties as well, very similar kind of thing.
So this is from your
This is from our sweat lodge, from a time when we had Lakota visitors, and we were all, again, we were offering them, offering this great spirit, the creator, this, as we were talking about our prayers. And you know, certain people, someone has a really serious issue, they'll usually make a prayer tie.
Oh, nice.
But you can make them for anything, but it's kind of like required almost in Lakota culture if there's a serious, you know, kind of condition.
Wow.
Okay, you make a prayer tie.
I want to thank you for talking about like the Mohegan tribe and giving us a little more insight into your background and to understanding what's going on there. So basically my last question is, since you've come back, what did you bring back to everyone in your tribe about what happened when you were in Standing Rock, or what you felt there in your experiences, and what is your tribe doing in support of what's going on there?
Right. So, first of all, like I mentioned earlier, my mother went out to Standing Rock a couple weeks before I did, and she is the medicine woman of the Mohegan tribe, Melissa Zobel. And basically, she had found out from a friend of Arvo Looking Horse, who is a great spiritual leader of not only Lakota, Nakota, and Dakota, and he's been at Standing Rock on and off.
Can you explain the difference?
So,
just because you said it fast.
I'm not an expert by any means, but there are various Lakota tribes as well as Dakota and Nakota, and they're all connected, basically. And so there's a lot of, some people who are actually Standing Rock Sioux are coming from Lakota, and some people are coming from Dakota.
Oh, okay.
So it's kind of a mixture that is the Standing Rock Sioux.
Okay. So it's not just one separate.
Yeah, it's one nation, but some of them are coming from different
areas.
branches. Yeah. So my mother had talked to someone who knew Arvo Looking Horse, and I guess he got in contact with Arvo, and she had found a pipe that was dated 1876. And my great aunt Gladys Tantaquidgeon, who's a very well-known Mohegan woman, she spent a long time working for the Bureau of Indian Affairs. She spent a long time in South Dakota, years ago, in the 1920s and 1930s, working with the tribes out there, trying to help in the best she could. And my mother has a book out called Medicine Trail, The Life and Lessons of Gladys Tantaquidgeon, and it explains a lot about her experiences in South Dakota. And it really, you know, even though I was in North Dakota, it really hit hard after being out in those areas, just to see what she did. She was skinning buffalo. She was taking people to the hospital 3 hours away because there was no it was just, must have been, you know, just so different then than it is now. And now it's even, you know,
it's not that much different, right?
Right. So I can only imagine what she went through. So there was a pipe that Gladys had at our museum, I believe in storage. It was dated from that long ago, and my mother reached out to these folks, and they said, okay, you know, bring it down, let's see what it is, because that is a very important time period, as we were discussing. And so they took it with them on the drive, and when they got down there, some folks to the sweat lodge with the pipe to see, you know, if they should take it, and they felt that it was a very sacred object. And so she had brought it, and it was a beautiful gift, and it was an exchange where it even went as far as all of those folks said, you know, you at Mohegan are blessed, and you know, we will always bless your family and the entire tribe, and it was just a beautiful thing. And again, part of the reason why I wanted to experience it myself, to learn, and where I was staying, where I did the sweat lodge, was at the Sikanju Lakota camp, which was where she was as well, giving the gifts. They call themselves the spiritual camp. I think it's the only camp that has the sweat lodge.
How do you say it again?
Sikanju, and I may not be 100% pronouncing it right, but it's the Rosebud Sioux. It's the Sikanju Lakota. It's the same tribe. So a lot came out of that experience. So I went there. I spent time at that camp, and then one of the men that they had met, Louis Goodvoice Eagle, he actually came to the Mohegan tribe to do some consulting at our museum, to look at objects, and also to speak about their experience. And Arvel had a message saying that we were protecting a lot of sacred objects and things like that. So it was a beautiful exchange. And also, on top of all that, I'm now having his uncle come and speak at not at the tribal library, but sponsored by the tribal library. I do a lot of events at work. They're open to just Mohegan tribal members and families. And I'm going to have his uncle come, who's a very well-respected Lakota historian and actor, novelist. He's written like 50 books, and his name is Joseph Marshall. And he is very knowledgeable about the issues because he, like, even his fiction books, which we read one for our, I run a tribal book club. They basically, it's historical fiction, so they're talking about treaty rights. They're talking about those battles in very, a lot of detail and just beautifully written stuff. So I'm very excited for him to come, talk about Standing Rock from his perspective. And also the tribe, when they went out, when not the whole tribe went out, my mother went out. Just wanted to mention my mother and a few other tribe members, 2 separate cars. They brought supplies, and the tribe did donate quite a bit of money as well. So they did do, just some of that kind of stuff, which is very important as well. But the connections that were made were even another level, I believe. Like the fact that I'm having Joseph come now, I'm very excited, to have him just come and teach people what he knows. So it's kind of just been this ongoing.
Wow, that's wonderful,
activity.
though. It's a great connection to have, too, and to understand how what your family had done, what their experience was, and how it kind of comes full circle.
Right, exactly. And they said they were so grateful for everything that Gladys did. Lewis was explaining to us there were certain some herb blends that she had, because my great aunt was a medicine woman as well, that she had explained to him that they still use at Lakota. So it was just all this information that you would have never known. So it's pretty amazing.
That is really amazing, actually, and it's kind of sad that it takes this for you guys to connect.
Right.
To something like this. But on the same time, I think it's a great reason to connect that way and to receive all that. So I have one last question for you. So what do you suggest people do if they feel called to support this cause?
I think that the various websites, the official websites, do have places where you can donate, and there's a list of needs. And I know April will go through some of that, some of the links afterwards. So there's a list of specific needs that people want. I know they had too much clothing at one point, so that wasn't something they really needed anymore. But there are a lot of things, a lot of camp gear, food always, money and things of that sort. So I recommend, going to those websites and making sure that it's going to the right place. Make sure that you have the right links. And if you want, you can go out there and support the cause. Most people, have jobs and things like that, so it is difficult for me. I was only able to go for a couple days because it is difficult. But there are folks out there that are building schools. They've quit their jobs. They're teaching kids. So it's kind of all what you feel that you're called to do.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you, Rachel, so much for speaking with me today. I'm so grateful for you being here. It's been wonderful talking with you. So I just want to say a few words to my audience. So you may be wondering why I'm interested or getting involved in this at all. Well, this goes back to what my mission is, promoting hope, healing our planet Earth one person at a time. If you're watching this and you think it doesn't pertain to you, please know that no one on this planet is untouched by the destruction of our Earth's resources. It may not affect you just this minute, but I promise the devastation for you in the future is real. We are all here on a mission, and that is to evolve humanity's consciousness. I remember back when I started this path and was growing my light quotient, I believed that I didn't have to get stuck in this world, and yet my guides would constantly remind me that I'm here on this planet for a reason, in a physical body for a reason, and as such, I would do my best by working together with people here on Earth. We are all one people. Doesn't matter our language, our skin color, our beliefs, our race, and beyond. We are one people, and we need to unite together to help one another. The only separation we have is being imposed upon us. Look into your hearts and see your truth as a human, as a being of light, and recognize that we need to support these people. They are us, and we are them. I wish to make mention that I feel very connected to Gaia, to the spiritual name for Earth. In fact, I'm so in tune with her that I experience it intuitively and physically feel each time everything that happens in North Dakota. I can't help but cry when I feel it. Their fight is my fight. Their fight is our fight. Their pain is our pain. Their truth is our truth. We are all connected. We need to stand together and join the brave warriors at the Standing Rock Sioux protest. I live far away from there, and it is not easy for me to get there, but I know the threat of the pipeline is real, and you should realize that too. We need to take action now to stand with the Standing Rock Sioux. If you're called and can get to North Dakota to help support them and stand in solidarity with these water protectors, then please do it. If you're not able to go, I understand, because I am not able to go and I really want to. Then there are a few steps that you can take right from the comfort of your home. I have actually been gathering and receiving supplies, and I've just sent a shipment of stuff out and mailed it out last week, right before Thanksgiving weekend. And I was collecting items that they needed from their websites that they offered to us, telling us what they need help with. So their websites that you can check out are Sacred Stone Camp, that's one of the camps, and I'm going to say the names probably incorrectly. Red Warrior Camp is the other one that I know of. So if you look at your screen, you're going to see the Facebook page for them. You're also going to see the information for their website themselves. And the other camp, the larger one, is, and I'm going to say wrong, Ocheti Sacco one?
There's different ways of pronouncing. You're fine.
Is that okay?
Yeah, I'm not Lakota, so
I know, but at least you know a little more.
Yeah, Ocheti Sacco is the big camp.
That's the biggest camp, and it's like a little city from the pictures that I've seen. So that, just pay attention to the screen right now. All that information will be there for you. Another way that you can support them is voice your support of the Standing Rock Sioux to your representatives. Look at your screen right now, and I have a list of representatives for you in the area. It's really important that they know in our government why this is important to you. They need to know your voice. They need to hear from you. Our representatives cannot represent us unless we are actually speaking to them and telling them what we need from them. So please, by all means, contact them. You can also call the governor of North Dakota, and I don't remember his name. I want to say it's Dalrymple, but I'm not positive. So you can call the governor of North Dakota. I have that on the screen now as well. Leave a message stating your opposition to the Dakota Access Pipeline. But even more importantly, let them know that the violent behavior by the police is unacceptable, and you oppose that right away. And you can also call the White House to urge President Obama to take whatever steps are necessary to protect the nonviolent water protectors. They are so in a place of peace. I don't think our government has ever seen such an experience before. And I find that we as a government, and as people of this government, we need to step in and say something to our representatives, to our president. If we don't do it, then we're not being heard, and the people are not being heard. And it's really important that we're heard. So Rachel, any steps you can think of that the viewers can take to help support the protectors? Anything else that you can think of that I just left out?
I think that you hit on most of it, April, but yeah, also just, if you see, whether it be this video or other videos of people actually at the camp protesting peacefully, share that so people can see what's really happening.
Oh yes, and by the way, they also need help with legal support, and they need assistance that way. So financial assistance. I know when I was collecting for the fundraiser I held, I made sure that everyone, they gave me either gift cards to the places they asked for example, Amazon, I believe Lowe's, because they were building places for people to live, winterizing the area, so that's the places they wanted to receive information from, money from. So I made sure they had gift cards, but you can donate. There's actual sites to go donate. So when you go there, there's links for you to find for donating. So Rachel, again, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. And to the viewers, I thank you all for tuning in and really helping me by listening to this episode. Minnie Wachoni.
In this together, yeah. This is what democracy looks like.